Harrison Cole ripped his daughter from the black woman's arms with such force that the baby's scream shattered the 3 a.m. silence. "Get your filthy hands off my child!" he roared, his face twisted with disgust. "You're the maid. You scrub toilets. You don't touch what's mine." But the moment Emma left Amara's chest, the 18-month-old began choking on her own sobs. Her tiny fingers clawed desperately backward, reaching for the woman on the cold floor. Not for her father. Not for the billionaire who owned everything in this mansion. For the maid who owned nothing, but had given her the one thing money couldn't buy. Before we continue this incredible story, I want to invite you to subscribe to this channel and follow along until the very end. Drop a comment below telling me which city you're watching from. I'm always amazed to see how far these stories travel across the world. Now let me take you back to the beginning. The nursery door flew open with enough force to crack against the wall. Harrison Cole stormed in his bare feet, slapping against the floor. 3 weeks of sleepless nights had worn his patience to nothing, and now this. This woman. This maid he had hired to clean his toilets and fold his laundry was lying on the floor of his daughter's nursery like she owned the place. "I said get up!" Harrison shouted. Amara Johnson's eyes snapped open. For a split second, confusion clouded her face. Then she felt Emma stir against her chest, and instinct took over. She pressed her palm gently against the baby's back, keeping her steady, keeping her calm. "Mr. Cole, please lower your voice," Amara whispered. "She just fell asleep." "I don't care if she just sprouted wings and learned to fly." Harrison crossed the room in 3 long strides. "You don't touch my daughter. You don't hold my daughter. You clean. You cook. That's what I pay you for." He reached down and grabbed Emma from Amara's arms. The movement was rough, impatient, fueled by a rage he couldn't explain even to himself. Emma's body went rigid the moment she left Amara's chest. Her eyes flew open wide and terrified, and then the screaming started. It wasn't crying, it was screaming. The kind of primal, desperate wail that seemed to come from somewhere deeper than an 18-month-old should be capable of reaching. "Shh, sweetheart, Daddy's here." Harrison bounced her gently. "It's okay, Emma. Daddy's got you." But Emma wasn't listening. Her tiny hands clawed at the air, reaching backward, reaching toward the woman still lying on the floor. Her face turned crimson. Her screams grew louder, more desperate, until Harrison could feel her entire body trembling in his arms. "What did you do to her?" Harrison spun toward Amara. "What the hell did you do to my daughter?" Amara pushed herself up slowly, her joints stiff from hours on the hard floor. She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she watched Emma thrash in her father's arms, watched the terror flooding the child's face, and felt something crack inside her chest. "I didn't do anything to her," Amara said quietly. "She was crying. For 5 hours, Mr. Cole. 5 hours. No one came. No one checked on her. I tried everything. The bottle, the rocking chair, the music box. Nothing worked. So you decided to lie on the floor with her like some kind of animal." The words hit Amara like a slap. She flinched, but didn't look away. "I decided to hold her," Amara said, her voice steady, despite the trembling in her hands. "I decided to let her feel a heartbeat against her chest. That's all." She stopped crying in less than a minute. Harrison opened his mouth to respond, but Emma's screams had reached a new pitch. She was gasping now, hiccuping, her face slick with tears and snot. Her fingers stretched toward Amara with such desperation that Harrison felt his arms ache from holding her back. "She doesn't know you," Harrison snapped. "You've been here 3 weeks. She's been with me her entire life. Then why is she reaching for me?" The question hung in the air between them. Harrison stared at Amara, then down at his daughter, who was now making sounds he'd never heard before. Small, wounded sounds, like an animal caught in a trap. "Give her to me." Harrison's head jerked up. "Excuse me. Give her to me." Amara took a step forward, her arms already rising. "She's terrified. You're scaring her. Let me calm her down, and then you can fire me. You can throw me out. But right now, that baby needs to stop crying before she hurts herself. You don't give me orders in my own house. I'm not giving you orders. I'm begging you. Amara's voice cracked. Please, Mr. Cole. Please, just let me hold her. Harrison looked at Emma. Her lips were turning blue from screaming. Her tiny body convulsed with each sob. He had held her like this before dozens of times over the past months, and he had never been able to make her stop. The night nurses couldn't do it. The pediatric specialists couldn't do it. His own mother couldn't do it. But this woman, this maid from nowhere with nothing, had done it in less than a minute. Against every instinct screaming in his head, Harrison held Emma out. Amara took her, gently cradling the baby against her chest, one hand supporting her head, the other pressed flat against her back. She began to rock slowly, not the exaggerated bouncing Harrison always tried, but a subtle sway. I got you, Amara whispered. I got you, little one. You're safe. You're okay. Emma's screams faded to cries. Her cries faded to whimpers. Her whimpers faded to silence. Within 30 seconds, she had buried her face in Amara's neck, her tiny fist clutching the fabric of her shirt. Harrison stood frozen, watching something he didn't understand and couldn't explain. How? The word came out hoarse. How did you do that? Amara kept rocking, her eyes fixed on Emma. I didn't do anything special. I just held her. That's not possible. I hold her every day. The nurses held her. Everyone held her. She screams for hours. She doesn't need to be held, Mr. Cole. She needs to be felt. Amara finally looked up at him. Babies know things we forget. They know who's really there and who's just going through the motions. Harrison's jaw tightened. What's that supposed to mean? It means she can feel your heartbeat, and right now your heart isn't with her. It's somewhere else, somewhere she can't reach. The silence that followed was deafening. Harrison wanted to argue. He wanted to tell this woman she didn't know anything about him, about his life, about the hell he'd been living since Claire died. But the words wouldn't come, because somewhere deep in his chest, in a place he'd been trying to ignore for 18 months, he knew she was right. Get out, he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. Amara's arms tightened around Emma. Mr. Cole. I said get out. Leave her in the crib and get out of this room. She'll cry again. The moment I put her down, then let her cry. Harrison's composure shattered. Let her cry until she learns that the world doesn't bend to her whims. Let her cry until she figures out that people leave and there's nothing anyone can do about it. The outburst echoed through the nursery, filling every corner with its ugly truth. Emma whimpered against Amara's chest, but didn't wake. Amara stared at Harrison for a long moment. Then she walked slowly to the crib and laid Emma down with the gentleness of someone handling something infinitely precious. She tucked the blanket around the baby's body, brushed a curl from her forehead, and stepped back. You're not angry at me, Amara said quietly, moving toward the door. You're angry at yourself, because you know you should be the one on that floor. You know you should be the one she reaches for. She paused at the doorway. I'll pack my things in the morning. And then she was gone. Harrison stood alone in the nursery, listening to the silence. For 3 beautiful minutes Emma slept. And then, exactly as Amara had predicted, the crying started again. It didn't stop until dawn. Mrs. Patterson found Amara in the kitchen at 6 in the morning, her single suitcase at her feet. The older woman had been the head housekeeper at the Cole estate for 23 years. She had seen maids come and go, but she had never seen one quite like this. You're still here, Mrs. Patterson said, setting a cup of tea in front of Amara. Waiting for my final paycheck. Amara wrapped her hands around the warm mug, but didn't drink. He told me to pack my things. He tells everyone to pack their things. Last month he told the gardener to leave because the roses weren't blooming fast enough. Mrs. Patterson settled into the chair across from her. The gardener is still here, So are the roses. This is different. Is it? Amara looked up. Mrs. Patterson was studying her with an expression she couldn't read. I was in the nursery, Amara said. I was holding Emma. He caught me. I know. I heard the shouting. So did half the county, I imagine. Then you know I crossed a line. Mrs. Patterson made a sound that might have been a laugh. Child, that baby has been crying every night for 6 months. 6 months. We've had 17 night nurses. 17. The last one stayed for 4 days before she quit and said this house was cursed. Maybe it is. Maybe. Or maybe it's just sad. Mrs. Patterson sipped her tea. Mr. Cole's wife died giving birth to Emma. Did you know that? Amara shook her head slowly. Hemorrhage. Doctors couldn't stop the bleeding. He held her hand while it happened, watched her slip away while Emma was still being cleaned off in the next room. Amara felt something twist in her stomach. He never talks about her. He doesn't talk about anything that matters. That's his way. But that baby feels it. Babies always do. She came into this world at the same moment her mother left it. And ever since then, she's been screaming for someone to fill that void. But she stopped with me. Mrs. Patterson nodded slowly. Yes, she did. And that terrifies him more than anything. Why would that terrify him? Because it means someone else can give his daughter what he can't. And for a man like Harrison Cole, a man who built a billion-dollar empire on the belief that he could do anything, that's the cruelest truth of all. They sat in silence for a moment. Amara stared into her tea, watching the steam curl upward and disappear. Can I tell you something? Mrs. Patterson asked. Of course. I've watched 17 women come through this house. Nurses, nannies, specialists with fancy degrees and expensive certifications. They all tried to fix Emma like she was a problem to be solved. They had techniques and schedules and sleep training methods. Mrs. Patterson shook her head. But you're the first one who just loved her. Amara's throat tightened. I'm not supposed to love her. I'm the maid. Love doesn't care about job titles, child. It goes where it's needed. The kitchen door swung open. Both women turned to see Harrison standing in the doorway, still in yesterday's clothes, his face haggard, his eyes red-rimmed. Mrs. Patterson, he said, his voice flat. Leave us. The older woman didn't move immediately. She looked at Amara, then back at Harrison. Whatever you're about to do, Mrs. Patterson said quietly, think carefully. That girl is the best thing that's happened to this house in 18 months. I said leave. Mrs. Patterson rose slowly, gathering her tea. She paused beside Harrison on her way out. Your wife would be ashamed of how you spoke to that woman last night, she whispered. Claire never treated anyone like they were beneath her, not once in all the years I knew her. Harrison's face went pale. Mrs. Patterson didn't wait for a response. She walked out, her footsteps fading down the hall. For a long moment, neither Harrison nor Amara spoke. The silence between them was thick, heavy, filled with all the things that had been said, and all the things that hadn't. I couldn't stop her from crying, Harrison finally said. No preamble, no explanation, just the raw admission dragged out of him like a confession. I tried all night. Nothing worked. She cried until she couldn't cry anymore, and then she just lay there staring at the ceiling like she'd given up. Amara gripped her suitcase handle. I'm sorry. Don't apologize. You were right. Harrison moved into the kitchen, pulling out a chair and dropping into it heavily. I haven't been there. Not really. I go through the motions. I hold her, I feed her, I check on her. But I'm not there. Not the way she needs me to be. Mr. Cole, you don't have to explain anything to me. Yes, I do. Because I'm about to ask you something, and you deserve to know why. Amara waited, her heart pounding against her ribs. Harrison rubbed his face with both hands, and for a moment, he didn't look like a billionaire at all. He looked like a tired, broken man trying to find his way through a darkness that had no end. "My wife and I tried for 7 years to have a baby," he said. 7 years. Treatment specialists, prayers, experimental procedures that cost more than most people make in a lifetime. Nothing worked. And then when we'd almost given up hope, Emma happened. His voice caught, and he had to pause before continuing. Claire was so happy. Happier than I'd ever seen her. She used to talk to Emma before she was born, tell her stories, sing her songs, make plans for birthday parties, and first days of school and college graduations. She had the nursery ready by the second trimester. Everything perfect. Everything waiting. Amara felt tears prick her eyes, but she didn't move, didn't speak. And then she was gone. One moment she was holding my hand laughing because Emma was kicking so hard, and the next... Harrison's hands clenched into fists on the table. The next there was blood everywhere, doctors shouting, alarms going off, and I couldn't do anything. I just stood there. I stood there while she bled out, and I didn't do a damn thing to save her. There was nothing you could have done. You don't know that. I know that some things are beyond our control. I know that blaming yourself for something you couldn't prevent is just another way of trying to make sense of something senseless. Harrison looked up at her, surprised by the certainty in her voice. How would you know anything about that? Amara was quiet for a moment. Then she released her grip on the suitcase and sat down across from him. My mother died 2 years ago, she said. She was a nurse, worked double shifts at a hospital in the Bronx for 30 years. Never complained, never asked for anything. She just showed up every day and took care of people who couldn't take care of themselves. Harrison watched her waiting. When COVID hit, she was one of the first to volunteer for the ICU. I begged her not to. I told her she was too old, too tired, that she'd already given enough. But she said the same thing she always said. Amara's voice wavered. She said, someone has to show up for the people who have no one else. She sounds like an incredible woman. She was. She was everything to me. Amara wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. She got sick in April. By May she was gone. I didn't even get to hold her hand. They wouldn't let me in the room. I had to say goodbye through a window, watching her breathe through a machine, knowing she couldn't hear me. I'm sorry. After she died, I lost everything. The apartment was in her name. I couldn't afford the rent. I had no other family, no savings, nothing. I ended up in a shelter in the Bronx, sleeping on a cot next to 50 other women who'd lost everything too. Harrison stared at her. You were homeless. For 2 years, I worked odd jobs when I could find them. Cleaning houses, washing dishes, anything that paid cash. Most nights I didn't know where my next meal was coming from. Amara met his eyes. So when you ask me how I know about blame and grief and feeling helpless, that's how I know. I've lived it. The kitchen fell silent. Outside the sun was fully up now, casting long shadows across the floor. Why didn't you tell me any of this when I hired you? Harrison asked. Because you didn't ask. You looked at my application, saw that I had cleaning experience, and handed me a uniform. That was the extent of our conversation. Harrison flinched. She was right. He hadn't asked her a single question about her life. He hadn't asked any of his staff anything personal in years. They were functions to him, not people. Roles to be filled, not stories to be heard. I've been a terrible employer, he said quietly. You've been a grieving man. There's a difference. Is there? Yes. Terrible employers don't care that they're terrible. You do. That's why you're sitting here right now instead of handing me a check and showing me the door. Harrison let out a long breath. I don't know how to fix any of this. I don't know how to be a father. I don't know how to run a household that isn't falling apart. I don't even know how to get through a single day without feeling like I'm drowning. Amara leaned forward. Then stop trying to fix it alone. What do you mean? I mean that you've been carrying all of this by yourself for 18 months. The grief, the guilt, The responsibility. You've shut everyone out because you think that's what strength looks like, but it's not. Real strength is admitting when you need help. And who's supposed to help me? My mother thinks I should remarry and move on. My business partners think I should focus on work. The therapists I've seen just want to medicate me into numbness. What about the people in this house? Mrs. Patterson has been here for 23 years. She knew your wife. She loves your daughter. Have you ever once sat down and talked to her about how you're feeling? Harrison was silent. Have you ever asked any of your staff how they're doing? Learned their names, their stories? Or are we all just interchangeable uniforms to you? That's not fair, isn't it? Amara's voice was gentle but firm. I've been in this house for 3 weeks. In that time, you've spoken to me exactly twice. Once when you hired me, and once last night when you screamed at me for holding your daughter. I don't even think you know my last name. Harrison opened his mouth, then closed it. He didn't know her last name. He'd never bothered to learn it. It's Johnson, Amara said. Amara Johnson. My mother's name was Grace. She grew up in Georgia, moved to New York when she was 19, and spent her whole life taking care of other people's children because she couldn't have any of her own until she had me at 42. Amara, I'm not telling you this to make you feel guilty. I'm telling you because this is what connection looks like. This is what being present means. It's not just showing up physically, it's showing up emotionally. It's learning someone's story and letting them learn yours. Harrison stared at her for a long moment. Something was shifting behind his eyes. Something that had been locked away for a very long time was beginning to crack. I blamed her, he whispered. Amara frowned. Blamed who? Emma. The word came out choked, barely audible. I blamed her for Claire's death. Not consciously, not deliberately. But somewhere inside me I looked at that baby and thought, if she hadn't been born, Claire would still be alive. Amara's breath caught. I know it's horrible. I know it's irrational. Claire wanted Emma more than anything in the world. She would have died 1,000 times over to bring her into existence. But I couldn't help it. Every time I looked at Emma, I saw the reason my wife was gone. That's why you pull away from her. Yes. Every time I hold her, every time I look into her eyes, I feel this wave of resentment that I can't control. And she feels it. She feels her own father resenting her existence, and that's why she cries. That's why nothing I do can comfort her. Tears were streaming down Harrison's face now. He didn't bother to wipe them away. I'm a monster, he said. What kind of father blames his own child for being born? Amara reached across the table and took his hand. He flinched at the contact, but didn't pull away. You're not a monster, she said firmly. You're a man who experienced the worst trauma imaginable and never dealt with it. You lost your wife at the exact moment you became a father. Those two things are tangled together in your mind so tightly that you can't separate them. How do I untangle them? You start by forgiving yourself. For the resentment, for the distance, for all the nights you let her cry because you couldn't face what holding her made you feel. I don't know if I can. You can. Because she needs you to. And because somewhere underneath all that pain you love her. You wouldn't be sitting here crying if you didn't. Harrison squeezed her hand. Will you help me? Help you how? Help me learn how to be her father. Help me learn how to be present. You're the only one she responds to, the only one who can calm her down. Maybe if I watch you learn from you, I can figure out how to do it myself. Amara hesitated. Mr. Cole, I'm just a maid. I'm not a therapist or a parenting expert or... You're the woman who slept on a cold floor so my daughter could rest. You're the woman who held her when no one else could. That makes you more qualified than anyone else who's walked through that door. Amara looked at him, at the tears on his face, at the desperation in his eyes, at the broken man underneath the billion-dollar facade. Okay, she said finally. I'll help you, but I have conditions. Name them. First, you stop treating the staff like furniture. You learn our names. You ask about our lives. You remember that we're human beings, not just functions. Done. Second, you spend at least 1 hour every day with Emma, not checking on her, not supervising her, actually being with her, playing with her, talking to her, letting her get to know you. I'll try. Third, you talk to someone, a therapist, a grief counselor, Mrs. Patterson, I don't care who. But you stop carrying all of this alone. Harrison nodded slowly. Anything else? Yes. Amara's voice softened. You stopped punishing yourself for being human. You made mistakes. You felt things you're ashamed of. Welcome to the club. That doesn't make you a monster. It makes you a person. And Emma doesn't need a perfect father. She just needs one who shows up. For a long moment, Harrison didn't speak. Then he stood up, walked around the table, and did something that shocked them both. He hugged her. It was awkward, clumsy, the embrace of a man who hadn't allowed himself to be comforted in 18 months. But Amara didn't pull away. She let him hold on, let him shake, let him grieve. Thank you, he whispered into her shoulder. Thank you for not giving up on her, on us. I don't give up easily, Amara said. My mother taught me that. When Harrison finally stepped back, his eyes were clearer than she'd ever seen them. We should go check on Emma, he said. She'll be waking up soon. You said I need to start being present. No time like the present. Amara smiled. Now you're learning. They walked upstairs together, their footsteps echoing through the quiet house. Outside the nursery door, Harrison hesitated. What if she cries when she sees me? Then she cries. And you stay anyway. That's the whole point. Harrison took a deep breath and pushed open the door. Emma was awake, standing in her crib, her tiny hands gripping the rails. When she saw them enter, her eyes went immediately to Amara, and her face lit up with recognition. Ma, she babbled, reaching out her arms. Amara felt her heart clench. It was the closest thing to Mama Emma had ever said. She glanced at Harrison, expecting to see hurt on his face. Instead, she saw something else. Determination. Go ahead, he said quietly. Pick her up. Show me how you do it. Amara crossed to the crib and lifted Emma into her arms. The baby immediately snuggled against her chest, making small, contented sounds. See how I'm holding her, Amara said. Not too tight, not too loose. She can feel my heartbeat against her ear. That's what calms her down, the rhythm. Harrison moved closer, watching intently. Now, I'm going to hand her to you, Amara continued. When I do, don't tense up. Don't hold your breath. Just breathe normally, and let her settle against you the same way. What if she cries? Then you keep breathing. You keep holding her. You don't pull away no matter how much you want to. She needs to know you're not going to leave. Amara slowly transferred Emma into Harrison's arms. The baby's face scrunched up immediately, her lower lip trembling. She's going to cry, Harrison said, panic edging into his voice. Maybe. Keep breathing. I can't do this. Yes, you can. Look at her. Talk to her. Let her hear your voice. Harrison looked down at his daughter. Her eyes were wide, uncertain, searching his face for something she hadn't been able to find in 18 months. Hi, Emma, he said softly. It's Daddy. I know I haven't been very good at this. I know I've been far away, even when I was right here. But I'm trying now. I'm really trying. Emma stared at him. The trembling in her lips slowed. Your mama loved you so much. Harrison continued, his voice breaking. She wanted you more than anything in the world. And I'm sorry I let my grief make you feel like you weren't wanted, because you are. You're wanted. You're loved. And I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure you know that. A tear slipped down Harrison's cheek and landed on Emma's hand. She looked at it curiously, then looked back up at her father's face, and then slowly, impossibly, she smiled. It was a small smile, tentative and fragile, but it was real, and it was directed at him. She smiled, Harrison breathed. She actually smiled at me. Amara felt tears streaming down her own face. She did. She's never done that before. Not once. Not ever. She was waiting for you to show up, and you finally did. Harrison pulled Emma closer, cradling her against his chest, the way Amara had shown him. The baby didn't cry. She didn't reach for Amara. She simply lay there, listening to her father's heartbeat for the first time. "This is what it's supposed to feel like," Harrison whispered. "Isn't it?" "Yes," Amara said. "This is exactly what it's supposed to feel like." They stood there together, the three of them, as the morning sun filled the nursery with light. For the first time in 18 months, the Cole estate felt like something other than a mausoleum. It felt like a home. But outside in the hallway, hidden in the shadows, someone was watching. Someone who had been waiting for exactly this moment. Someone who had plans of her own for the Cole family fortune. And she had just found the perfect weapon to use against them. Vivian Cole lowered her phone, a cold smile spreading across her face. The photos she had just taken would change everything. A black maid embracing her son. Her granddaughter calling another woman Mama. This was exactly the ammunition she needed. She turned and walked silently down the hallway, already composing the message she would send to her lawyers. Harrison thought his nightmare was over. He had no idea it was just beginning. Vivian Cole had been waiting 17 months for this moment. She sat in her Mercedes outside the estate gates, scrolling through the photos on her phone. The black maid holding her granddaughter. Her son embracing the help like she was family. Emma reaching for a stranger instead of her own blood. Perfect. Absolutely perfect. She dialed her attorney before the engine even cooled. "Richard, it's Vivian. I need you at the house tomorrow morning. Yes, it's urgent. I have evidence that my son is unfit to raise my granddaughter." She paused, listening. "No, not drugs. Something worse. He's letting the help take over. A maid Richard. A black maid from God knows where is playing mother to my Claire's baby." She ended the call and stared at the mansion in the distance. Claire had been her only daughter. The golden child. The one who married well, lived well, did everything right. And then she died bringing Emma into the world, and Harrison had slowly lost his mind ever since. Vivian had tried to be patient. She had offered to move in to hire proper nannies from proper agencies to take Emma to her estate in Greenwich, where she could be raised correctly. Harrison refused every offer. He wanted to do it himself, he said. He wanted to honor Claire's memory. And now look what honoring Claire's memory had become. A maid sleeping on nursery floors. Her granddaughter crying for the help instead of family. This ended tomorrow. Inside the mansion, Harrison had no idea what was coming. He was still in the nursery holding Emma, marveling at the fact that she hadn't cried in over an hour. Amara sat nearby watching them both with an expression he couldn't quite read. "She's falling asleep," Harrison whispered. "She's actually falling asleep in my arms." "Don't sound so surprised," Amara said softly. "You're her father. This is how it's supposed to be. It's never been like this before, not once. Because you were never really here before. Now you are." Harrison looked down at his daughter's face, peaceful and trusting for the first time he could remember. Something cracked open in his chest. Something that had been sealed shut since the day Claire died. "I wasted so much time," he said, his voice breaking. 18 months. I wasted 18 months being angry at a baby who did nothing wrong." "You can't get those months back," Amara replied. "But you can make sure she never feels that anger again." "How?" "By showing up, every day, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard." Harrison nodded slowly. He carried Emma to her crib and laid her down with more gentleness than he'd ever shown her. She stirred slightly, her tiny hand reaching up, but she didn't cry. She simply sighed and settled deeper into sleep. "Thank you," Harrison said, turning to Amara. "I don't know how to repay you for this. You don't owe me anything. I did it for her, not for you." "I know. That's what makes it mean so much." They stood there in the quiet nursery, Two people from completely different worlds who had somehow found common ground in their love for a little girl who needed them both. "You should get some sleep," Amara said finally. "Real sleep. In a bed. I'll stay here in case she wakes up." "You've been sleeping on the floor for 3 weeks. That's not right." "It's fine. I've slept in worse places." Harrison frowned. "That's exactly my point. You shouldn't have to." He walked to the door, then paused. "Tomorrow we're getting you a proper room. Close to the nursery but with a real bed. And a raise. A significant one." "Mr. Cole, that's not necessary." "Harrison, call me Harrison. And yes, it is necessary. You've done more for my daughter in 3 weeks than anyone else has done in 18 months. That deserves recognition." Amara didn't know what to say. She had spent so long expecting nothing from anyone that kindness felt almost suspicious. "Get some rest," Harrison said. "We'll figure out the details tomorrow." He left, and Amara sank into the rocking chair beside Emma's crib. Her body ached from weeks of sleeping on hard floors. Her mind raced with everything that had happened in the past few hours. And somewhere deep in her heart, a tiny flame of hope flickered to life. Maybe this was finally the fresh start she had been praying for. She was wrong. The next morning arrived with the sound of car doors slamming and heels clicking on marble floors. Amara was in the kitchen, helping Mrs. Patterson prepare breakfast when she heard voices in the foyer. "Where is my son?" A woman's voice sharp and commanding. "Mrs. Cole, I wasn't informed you were coming." Mrs. Patterson's tone was careful guarded. "I don't need to inform anyone. This is my family's home. Now where is Harrison?" Amara stepped into the hallway, just as Vivian Cole swept through the foyer like a cold wind. The older woman was immaculate in cream-colored silk. Her silver hair perfectly styled, her jewelry subtle but expensive. She looked like old money, because she was old money. 3 generations of Connecticut wealth wrapped in Chanel. Vivian stopped when she saw Amara. Her eyes traveled slowly from Amara's worn shoes, to her simple uniform, to her face. The contempt was instant and undisguised. "You must be the maid." "Yes, ma'am. I'm Amara Johnson." "I didn't ask your name." Vivian turned to Mrs. Patterson. "Where is my granddaughter?" "Still sleeping, ma'am. She had a peaceful night for the first time in months." "I'm sure she did." Vivian's voice dripped with implication. "Where is my son?" "Right here." Harrison appeared at the top of the stairs, still in his pajamas, his hair disheveled. He looked more relaxed than he had in months, but that relaxation vanished the moment he saw his mother-in-law. "Vivian, what are you doing here?" "I came to see my granddaughter, and to discuss some concerns I have about her care." "At 7 in the morning, without calling first. I didn't realize I needed permission to visit Claire's child." The mention of Claire's name hung in the air like a weapon. Vivian knew exactly what she was doing. She had been using Claire's memory as leverage since the funeral. "Let's talk in my study." Harrison set his jaw tight. "No, let's talk right here, in front of everyone." Vivian pulled out her phone and held it up. "Would you like to explain these?" She showed him the photos. Harrison and Amara in the nursery. Amara holding Emma. Harrison embracing Amara. The images looked innocent to anyone who understood the context. But stripped of context, they looked like something else entirely. "Where did you get these?" Harrison's voice went cold. "That's not the question you should be asking. The question you should be asking is what the board of directors will think when they see them. What the press will think. What Claire's memory deserves." "There's nothing inappropriate in those photos. Amara was helping me with Emma. She's the only person who's been able to get her to stop crying. A maid. A black maid from a homeless shelter is the only person who can care for my granddaughter." Vivian laughed, a brittle, cruel sound. "Do you hear yourself, Harrison? Do you hear how far you've fallen?" Amara felt the words like a physical blow. She wanted to disappear, to melt into the walls, to be anywhere but standing in this marble foyer, while this woman dissected her worth. "That's enough," Harrison said, stepping down the stairs. "You don't get to come into my home and insult my staff." Your staff, is that what she is? Vivian's eyes narrowed. Because it looks like she's become considerably more than that. She's an employee who has been exceptional at her job, nothing more. Then you won't mind when I have my attorney review her background, her employment history, her criminal record if she has one. I don't have a criminal record, Amara said, her voice steady despite the trembling in her hands. I've never broken a law in my life. Vivian turned to her slowly, as if noticing a piece of furniture that had suddenly spoken. I wasn't addressing you. But you were talking about me, and I have a right to defend myself. You have a right to do your job and stay silent. That's what maids do. Mother. Harrison's voice cut through the tension. I said that's enough. I'm not your mother, Harrison. I'm Claire's mother, and I will not stand by while you disgrace her memory by letting the help raise her daughter. The help has done more for Emma than you ever have. When was the last time you held her, Vivian? When was the last time you tried to comfort her when she was crying? Vivian's face went pale with rage. How dare you? How dare I? How dare you come into my home and make accusations based on photographs you took while spying on us? How dare you reduce this woman to a stereotype because she doesn't fit your idea of who should be caring for Emma? She's not fit to care for a Cole. And who is the 17 nannies who quit the specialists who couldn't make a difference? You. Harrison stepped closer to Vivian, his voice dropping to something dangerous. You haven't visited in 4 months. You send gifts and checks and think that makes you a grandmother. But you don't show up. You never show up. Not when Emma was sick. Not when I was falling apart. Not once. I offered to help. You refused. You offered to take over. There's a difference. The foyer fell silent. Mrs. Patterson stood frozen by the kitchen door. Amara remained motionless, afraid that any movement might shatter the tension into something worse. Then, from upstairs, a sound that changed everything. Emma crying. Amara moved instinctively toward the stairs, but Vivian blocked her path. Don't you dare! I'll handle my granddaughter. She doesn't know you, Amara said. If you go up there now, you'll only scare her more. I'm her grandmother. Her blood. Blood doesn't mean anything to an 18-month-old. She knows who's been there, who's held her, who's comforted her in the dark. And that's you, is it, the maid? Yes, that's me. Vivian stared at her, shock and fury warring on her face. No one had ever spoken to her like this. Certainly not the help. Harrison moved past them both. I'll get her. He climbed the stairs 2 at a time and disappeared into the nursery. The crying continued for a moment, then slowly began to quiet. When Harrison emerged a few minutes later, Emma was in his arms, her face tear-streaked but calm. She was looking at her father with something like trust. Then she saw Amara, and her face lit up. Ma! She babbled, reaching out her arms. Vivian went rigid. What did she just call her? No one answered. Emma continued to reach for Amara, making frustrated sounds when she didn't come. She called the maid, Mama, Vivian breathed. She called the help Mama instead of her own family. She's a baby, Harrison said. She doesn't understand. She understands enough. She understands that you've let this woman replace Claire, replace me, replace everyone who actually matters. No one's replacing anyone. Emma needed someone who could reach her. Amara could. That's all that happened. That's all? Vivian's voice rose to a near shriek. My granddaughter is calling a homeless maid Mama, and you think that's all? Emma began to cry again, frightened by the shouting. Harrison held her tighter, trying to soothe her, but it wasn't working. The fear was too strong. Amara couldn't stand it anymore. Let me take her, she said, stepping forward. Please. She's terrified. Vivian moved to block her. You will not touch that child. She's crying. She's scared. Does that matter to you at all? Or is this just about winning? The question hit Vivian like a slap. For a moment her composure cracked and something raw flickered behind her eyes, something almost human. Then it was gone. "I'll have my attorney here within the hour," Vivian said, her voice ice. "We're going to discuss custody arrangements. Proper custody arrangements. With proper caregivers." "You can't take Emma from me," Harrison said. "I'm her father." "You're a father who's clearly incapable of making sound decisions. The courts will see that. The board will see that. Everyone will see that." Vivian collected her purse and walked toward the door. "Enjoy your morning, Harrison. It's the last peaceful one you'll have for a very long time." She left. The door closed behind her with a sound like a coffin lid. For a long moment, no one moved. Emma's cries had faded to whimpers. Mrs. Patterson looked like she might faint. Harrison stood on the stairs holding his daughter, staring at the closed door like he could see through it to the disaster that was coming. "She's going to try to take Emma," he said finally. "She's actually going to try." "Can she?" Amara asked. "Legally? I don't know. She has money, connections. She was Claire's mother. If she can convince a judge that I'm unfit—" "You're not unfit. You're grieving. There's a difference. Try explaining that to a Connecticut family court. They see a widowed father who can't stop his baby from crying, who lets the maid sleep in the nursery, who just got photographed embracing the help." Harrison's laugh was bitter. "Vivian doesn't need to prove I'm unfit. She just needs to create doubt." Amara felt sick. This was her fault. If she hadn't gotten involved, if she had just stayed in her lane, none of this would be happening. "I should go," she said. "If I leave, maybe she'll back off. Maybe—" "No." Harrison's voice was firm. "You're not leaving. That's exactly what she wants. She wants to isolate me, make me feel like I can't trust anyone, push me back into the darkness I was living in before you came. But if I stay, she'll use me against you." "Then let her try. I'm done making decisions based on fear. I'm done letting other people's opinions dictate how I raise my daughter." Harrison looked down at Emma, who was finally calming in his arms. "You helped me find my way back to her. I'm not going to punish you for that. I'm going to fight for you. For both of you." Amara felt tears pricking her eyes. "You barely know me." "I know enough. I know you slept on a cold floor so my daughter could rest. I know you told me the truth when everyone else was tiptoeing around me. I know you didn't run when things got hard. I've been running my whole life. This is the first time I've had somewhere worth staying." Harrison shifted Emma in his arms and reached out his hand to Amara. "Then stay. Not as my maid, not as my employee, as part of this family. Whatever that looks like, whatever it becomes, we'll figure it out together." Amara looked at his hand, at Emma, who was watching her with those big, trusting eyes, at the life she had never dared to imagine for herself. She took his hand. "Together," she said. 3 hours later, Richard Ashworth, Vivian's attorney, arrived with a folder of documents and a predatory smile. Behind him came 2 women in expensive suits, child welfare specialists, hired to document everything they saw. The war for Emma Cole had officially begun. Richard Ashworth spread his documents across Harrison's dining table like a general laying out battle plans. The 2 child welfare specialists flanked him, their tablets already recording everything they observed. "Mr. Cole, I want to be clear about our intentions." Richard began, his voice smooth as oil. "Mrs. Vivian Cole is not seeking to remove Emma from your care permanently. She simply wants to ensure her granddaughter is being raised in an appropriate environment." "And who decides what's appropriate?" Harrison asked his attorney, David Chen, seated beside him. "The courts ultimately, but we're hoping to avoid that." Richard slid a document across the table. "This is a proposed custody arrangement, joint custody between yourself and Mrs. Cole. Emma would spend weekdays with you and weekends at the Greenwich estate." Harrison didn't touch the paper. "And what happens to my household staff under this arrangement?" Richard's smile tightened. "Mrs. Cole has concerns about certain—" Influences in Emma's life. The arrangement includes provisions for approved caregivers only. Meaning Amara goes. Meaning proper vetted childcare professionals would be employed. Nothing personal against Miss Johnson, of course. It's simply a matter of qualifications. David Chen leaned forward. My client has no obligation to change his household staff based on his mother-in-law's preferences. Miss Johnson has committed no wrongdoing. She's been sleeping in the nursery, one of the welfare specialists interjected. That's highly irregular. She's been comforting a child who couldn't sleep through the night, Harrison shot back. A child that 17 certified professionals couldn't help. That's precisely the concern, Richard said. An untrained individual forming such an intense attachment with a vulnerable child. The psychological implications are that my daughter is finally sleeping, finally eating, finally smiling. Harrison's voice rose. Do you have any idea what the past 18 months have been like? Do you have any idea what it's like to hold your own child and feel her flinch away from you? Mr. Cole, please calm down. Don't tell me to calm down. You come into my home, threaten my family, and expect me to be calm. David placed a hand on Harrison's arm. Let me handle this. The meeting continued for another brutal hour. Richard outlined Vivian's concerns, the photographs, the sleeping arrangements, Amara's background, her 2 years of homelessness, her lack of formal childcare training. Each point was delivered with surgical precision designed to paint a picture of chaos and poor judgment. By the time they finished, Harrison felt like he'd been run over by a truck. We'll need to conduct a home inspection, Richard said as he gathered his papers. Standard procedure. The specialists will observe Emma's daily routine, her interactions with staff, her living conditions. When? This afternoon, and every day for the next 2 weeks. We want a complete picture. After they left, Harrison sat alone in the dining room, his head in his hands. David had gone to make calls. Mrs. Patterson was preparing lunch, and Amara was upstairs with Emma. The house felt like a battlefield. David returned 20 minutes later with a grim expression. I made some inquiries. Vivian has been planning this for months. She hired a private investigator to watch the house. That's how she got the photographs. She's been spying on me. Since November, she has files on every staff member, every visitor, every delivery. She's building a case that you've become unstable since Claire's death. Harrison laughed bitterly. Because I have been unstable. I've been a wreck. She's not wrong about that. Being grief-stricken isn't the same as being unfit. We can fight this. How she has money connections and apparently a surveillance operation. What do I have? You have the truth. You have a daughter who's thriving for the first time in 18 months, and you have witnesses who can testify to your progress. David paused. Including Amara. Leave her out of this. I can't. She's the center of Vivian's complaint. If we're going to win, we need her story, all of it. Her background, her relationship with Emma, everything. Harrison stood abruptly. I need to talk to her first. She deserves to know what she's being dragged into. He found Amara in the nursery sitting in the rocking chair with Emma asleep in her lap. She looked up when he entered, and he saw the fear she was trying to hide. They're going to investigate everything, she said quietly. Aren't they? Harrison nodded. I'm sorry. I never meant for you to become a target. I knew what I was doing when I stayed. I knew there would be consequences. There shouldn't be. You helped my daughter. That shouldn't be a crime. Amara looked down at Emma's sleeping face. In their world it is. A woman like me isn't supposed to matter, isn't supposed to be capable of love that counts. Their world is wrong. Their world has lawyers and judges and money. Being wrong doesn't mean losing. Harrison knelt beside the rocking chair. I won't let them take her from you, either of you. You might not have a choice. There's always a choice. I chose to shut down for 18 months. I chose to blame my daughter for something that wasn't her fault. I chose to let grief turn me into a ghost. He took Amara's hand. Now I'm choosing differently. I'm choosing to fight. The first welfare inspection began at 2 o'clock. The specialists, Dr. Marianne Foster and Sarah Klein, moved through the house with clipboards and critical eyes. They photographed everything: the nursery, the kitchen, Amara's room on the 3rd floor with its bare walls and single bed. "Miss Johnson, how long have you been employed here?" Dr. Foster asked. 3 weeks. "And in that time you've formed a significant attachment with Emma Cole." "I care about her, yes." "Would you say your attachment is appropriate for a household employee?" Amara met her gaze steadily. "I would say my attachment is appropriate for a human being who heard a child crying alone in the dark and chose to help." Sarah Klein made a note on her tablet. "Mrs. Cole mentioned that Emma calls you Mama. Is that accurate?" "She's 18 months old. She doesn't know what Mama means. She's just associating the sound with comfort. But you are her primary source of comfort, not her father." "I was. We're working on changing that." The inspection continued for 4 hours. They watched Emma's feeding time, her playtime, her nap routine. They observed Harrison's interactions with her, noting every moment of awkwardness, every time he looked to Amara for guidance. By the time they left, Amara felt exposed in ways she hadn't felt since the shelter. "They're going to use everything against us," she told Harrison that evening. "Every hesitation, every mistake." "Then we don't make mistakes." "That's not realistic. Parenting is nothing but mistakes. The difference is whether you learn from them." "Then we learn faster than they can document." The next 2 weeks became a pressure cooker. Every morning brought a new inspection. Every afternoon brought calls from lawyers. Every evening brought Emma's bedtime routine, now performed under microscopic scrutiny. Harrison threw himself into fatherhood with desperate intensity. He learned to change diapers without fumbling. He memorized lullabies. He practiced the exact rhythm of rocking that Amara had taught him. Slowly, painfully, Emma began to accept his presence without reaching for Amara first. But Vivian wasn't idle either. On day 8, she launched her public relations campaign. Anonymous tips to gossip columnists. Whispered stories at country club luncheons. Within a week, half of Connecticut's elite had heard the scandalous tale of the Cole heir being raised by a homeless black maid, while her grief-stricken father fell apart. The news hit social media like wildfire. Harrison's company stock dropped 3% in a single day. Board members called, demanding explanations. Business partners reconsidered meetings. The scandal was becoming a financial crisis. "You have to let her go," David advised during an emergency call. "The optics are destroying you." "No." "Harrison, listen to me. Your net worth has dropped $40 million in a week. The board is calling for an emergency meeting. If this continues..." I said no, I'm not sacrificing Amara to appease people who don't matter. The people who matter are the ones who can take Emma away. Right now, Vivian is winning the narrative. The more you dig in, the more you look obsessed, unstable, exactly what she wants them to see. Harrison hung up without responding. That night he found Amara packing her suitcase. "What are you doing?" "What I should have done the moment Vivian showed up." Amara didn't look at him. "I'm leaving." "No. This isn't your choice. It's mine." She folded a shirt with trembling hands. "I've already caused too much damage. Your reputation, your company, your chance at keeping Emma." "None of that matters." "It all matters. Don't you understand?" Amara finally turned to face him, and there were tears streaming down her cheeks. "This isn't a fairy tale. This is real life. In real life, women like me don't win against women like Vivian. We just survive long enough to try again somewhere else. I'm not asking you to win against Vivian. I'm asking you to stay while I do. You can't win either. Not with me here. I'm the weapon she's using against you. The only way to disarm her is to remove me from the equation." "And what about Emma? She wakes up tomorrow and you're gone. How do I explain that?" Amara's face crumpled. "You tell her the truth. That sometimes people who love us have to leave to protect us. That's not protection. That's abandonment. That's exactly what I did to her for 18 months, and I won't let you do the same thing. It's not the same. It's exactly the same. You told me that showing up matters. That being present is everything. Were those just words? Or did you actually mean them? Amara stood frozen, the shirt clutched in her hands. I meant them, she whispered. Then prove it. Stay. Fight. Stop running from people who want to make you feel small. You don't understand what it's like. To have everything you are reduced to the color of your skin, to your poverty, to every bad thing that ever happened to you. You're right. I don't understand. I've never had to understand. But I'm trying to learn. Harrison stepped closer. Teach me. Help me see what you see. And let me help you see what I see. What do you see? I see a woman who should have given up 1,000 times but didn't. Who had every reason to become hard and bitter but stayed soft. Who walked into a stranger's house and loved a stranger's child like her own. That's not strength. That's just survival. Maybe they're the same thing. Maybe surviving is the bravest thing any of us can do. Amara stared at him for a long moment. Then she set down the shirt. 1 more week, she said. I'll stay 1 more week, but if things get worse, they won't. You can't promise that. No, but I can promise that whatever happens, you won't face it alone. The next morning brought the worst blow yet. A process server appeared at the door with official documents. Vivian had filed for emergency temporary custody, claiming imminent harm to Emma's welfare. The hearing was scheduled for 3 days later. She's accelerating the timeline, David explained. She knows the longer this drags out, the more you stabilize. She wants a ruling before you can fully recover. What are our chances? David hesitated too long before answering. Family courts prioritize stability. Vivian can offer wealth connections, a pristine home environment. You're offering a household in transition with a caregiver who has no formal qualifications. Emma is thriving. Doesn't that count for something? It counts for everything in a rational world. But family court isn't always rational. Judges see what they expect to see. And they expect a grieving widower to be struggling. Harrison spent the next 72 hours in preparation mode. He gathered medical records showing Emma's improvement. He collected statements from Mrs. Patterson and other staff members. He compiled evidence of Vivian's 4-month absence and limited involvement. But the night before the hearing, something happened that changed everything. Emma got sick. It started with a fever around midnight. By 2 in the morning, she was burning up, crying inconsolably, refusing all comfort. Harrison tried everything. Amara tried everything. Nothing worked. We need to take her to the hospital, Amara said, pressing a cool cloth to Emma's forehead. If we go to the hospital tonight, Vivian will find out. She'll use it as proof that we can't handle a simple fever. She's not handling a simple fever. Her temperature is 104. That's not something we can wait out. Harrison looked at his daughter, saw the distress in her flushed face, and made his decision. Get the car. They arrived at Connecticut Children's Hospital at 3 in the morning. Emma was immediately admitted and hooked up to IV fluids. The diagnosis came an hour later. Ear infection, the doctor explained. Fairly common at her age, but it got severe because it went untreated. Has she been tugging at her ears? Sleeping poorly. Harrison felt the blood drain from his face. She's been sleeping poorly for months. I thought it was grief. I thought it was psychological. It may have started that way, but at some point the infection began, probably about 4 to 6 weeks ago based on what I'm seeing. 4 to 6 weeks ago, before Amara arrived, before any of them knew to look for something physical. Will she be okay? With antibiotics and rest, she should recover fully, but I want to keep her overnight for observation. Harrison sat in the hospital room, watching his daughter sleep with tubes in her tiny arms, and felt the full weight of his failure crash down on him. All those nights of crying, all those months of screaming, and at least part of it had been pain. Real physical pain that no one had thought to check for. Amara found him in the hallway at 6 in the morning, slumped against the wall with his head in his hands. "The hearing is in 4 hours," she said softly. "I know. You need to go. David is handling the preliminary motions, but you need to be there." "I can't leave her." "I'll stay. I'll be here when she wakes up." Harrison looked up at her. "If I go to that hearing and lose, they might not let you stay with her. They might remove you immediately." "Then we better make sure you don't lose." "How I just found out that my daughter has been in pain for weeks and I didn't notice. How do I convince a judge I'm a fit parent?" Amara knelt beside him. "You convince them by telling the truth. You were drowning in grief. You missed things you shouldn't have missed. But the moment you started trying, really trying, everything changed. Emma is better. She's happier. She's finally becoming the child she was supposed to be. Is that enough?" "It has to be, because it's all we have." Harrison looked through the hospital room window at Emma's small form in the bed. "I love her," he said. "I know I didn't show it for a long time. I know I made mistakes that can never be fully forgiven. But I love her, more than anything in this world." "Then go tell that to the judge. Go fight for her. And when you win, come back here and tell her yourself." Harrison stood slowly. He looked at Amara for a long moment. "Whatever happens today, I want you to know something. You changed everything, not just for Emma, for me. I was dead before you came, walking around breathing, existing, but dead. You brought me back to life. You brought yourself back. I just opened the door. Then thank you for opening the door." He left for the courthouse at 8 o'clock, leaving Amara alone with Emma and a prayer that the truth would be enough. The hearing began at 10. The judge was a stern-faced woman named Patricia Holbrook, who had been on the family bench for 23 years. She had seen every kind of custody dispute imaginable, and her expression suggested she had already formed opinions about this one. "We're here to determine emergency temporary custody of Emma Claire Cole, age 18 months. Judge Holbrook announced. "Mrs. Vivian Cole claims the child is in imminent danger under her father's care. Mr. Harrison Cole disputes this claim. Let's hear the evidence." Richard Ashworth went first. He presented the photographs, the sleeping arrangements, Amara's background, the social media scandal, the stock drop. He painted a picture of a household in chaos run by a grieving man who had surrendered parental authority to an unqualified stranger. "Your Honor, Mrs. Cole doesn't seek to punish her son-in-law. She seeks to protect her granddaughter. Emma deserves stability. She deserves proper care. She deserves a home where her welfare comes first." David Chen rose to respond. He presented the medical records showing Emma's improvement, the statements from household staff, the evidence of Vivian's long absence. "Your Honor, Mr. Cole has made remarkable progress in recent weeks. His daughter is healthier, happier, and more secure than she has been since birth. The only instability in her life right now is this lawsuit." Back and forth they went, arguing over who loved Emma more, who could provide for her better, who deserved the right to shape her future. Then Judge Holbrook asked the question that changed everything. "I notice the child isn't present. Where is Emma right now?" Harrison stood. "She's in the hospital, Your Honor. She was admitted last night with a severe ear infection." The courtroom fell silent. Vivian's face went pale. "An ear infection?" the judge asked. "Serious enough to require hospitalization?" "Yes, Your Honor. We discovered that she's been suffering from it for several weeks. It explains much of the sleep disturbance and distress she's experienced." "And who is with her now?" Harrison took a deep breath. "Miss Amara Johnson. The woman Mrs. Cole wants removed from my household. The woman who has cared for my daughter when no one else could. The woman who sat with me at 3 in the morning while we waited for doctors to tell us if Emma would be okay." Judge Holbrook studied him for a long moment. "Mr. Cole, I've read the complaints against you. I've seen the photographs. I've heard the allegations. But I haven't heard you speak yet. Not really. So I'm going to ask you directly. Why should this court believe you're capable of raising your daughter? Harrison looked at Vivian, then at the judge, then at his own hands. Because I finally learned what it means to show up, he said. For 18 months I was physically present but emotionally absent. I blamed my daughter for my wife's death. I let professionals handle her care while I hid in my grief. I failed her in every way a father can fail. He paused, gathering himself. But then something changed. Someone showed me what real presence looks like. Someone slept on a cold floor so my daughter could rest. Someone told me the truth when everyone else was tiptoeing around my pain. And because of that, I woke up. Your Honor, I'm not a perfect father. I may never be. But I'm finally trying. I'm finally there. And my daughter knows it. She's starting to trust me. Starting to reach for me. Starting to become the child she was always meant to be. And Miss Johnson, what role does she play in this transformation? She's the reason it happened, not because she replaced me, but because she showed me how to be replaceable. She loved Emma so completely that I finally understood what I was missing, what I had been denying both of us. You understand that keeping her in your household creates complications, that it raises questions about your judgment. I understand that people will always find reasons to question choices that don't fit their expectations. But I also understand that my daughter is alive and healing and happy. That matters more than anyone's opinion, including mine. Judge Holbrook was silent for a long moment. Then she shuffled her papers and looked at both parties. I'm going to recess for 1 hour to review the evidence. When I return, I'll give my ruling. The hour that followed was the longest of Harrison's life. He sat in the courthouse hallway, unable to eat, unable to think, unable to do anything but pray. When they reconvened, Judge Holbrook wasted no time. I've reviewed everything presented to this court, the photographs, the testimonies, the medical records, the financial impacts, and I've come to a decision. She looked at Vivian first. Mrs. Cole, your concern for your granddaughter is evident. But concern is not the same as involvement. You've been largely absent from Emma's life for months. You've conducted surveillance on your son-in-law rather than offering support, and you've weaponized a family crisis for what appears to be personal control. Vivian's face went white. Mr. Cole, your mistakes are also evident. You withdrew from your daughter during a critical period. You made choices that invited scrutiny. But you've also demonstrated something I don't often see in this courtroom: genuine change. The medical records support it. The staff testimonies support it. And most importantly, your daughter's well-being supports it. Judge Holbrook set down her gavel. I'm denying the petition for emergency temporary custody. Emma Cole will remain in her father's care. However, I'm ordering regular check-ins with a court-appointed social worker for the next 6 months to ensure continued progress. Harrison felt his legs nearly give out beneath him. Additionally, the judge continued, I'm recommending that Mrs. Cole pursue a healthier relationship with her granddaughter through appropriate visitation rather than litigation. Families heal through connection, not courtrooms. She stood. This hearing is adjourned. Harrison didn't remember leaving the courthouse. He didn't remember driving to the hospital. He only remembered running down the corridor to Emma's room and finding Amara there holding his daughter, tears streaming down both their faces. You won, Amara whispered. We won, Harrison said. And then he did something he had been afraid to do for 18 months. He wrapped his arms around both of them and let himself feel like a father. 3 weeks after the court ruling, life in the Cole estate had transformed into something none of them recognized. Emma was home from the hospital fully recovered, and for the first time since her birth, she was sleeping through the night. Not on Amara's chest, not in anyone's arms. In her own crib, peaceful and secure, trusting that someone would be there if she needed them. Harrison had kept every promise he made. He spent at least 2 hours every day with Emma, not supervising, not checking in, but actually playing with her, reading to her, learning the songs she liked and the foods she preferred, and the way she scrunched her nose when she was about to laugh. And Amara had stayed, not as a maid anymore. Harrison had promoted her to household manager with a salary that made her dizzy when she saw the numbers. She had her own room now with a real bed and a closet full of clothes that weren't secondhand. She was still getting used to the feeling of having things. But the peace couldn't last. It never does. The first sign of trouble came on a Tuesday morning when Mrs. Patterson handed Amara an envelope that had been delivered by courier. "It's addressed to you," Mrs. Patterson said, her face troubled. "No return address." Amara opened it carefully. Inside was a single photograph and a handwritten note. The photograph showed Amara from years ago standing outside a building she recognized immediately. The Bronx Women's Shelter. She was thinner in the picture, gaunt, wearing clothes that barely fit. Her eyes were hollow, with the kind of despair that comes from having nothing and no one. The note read, "I know who you really are. I know what you did to survive. Tell Harrison Cole the truth, or I will." Amara's hands began to shake. She turned the photograph over, looking for any indication of who had sent it. There was nothing. "What is it?" Mrs. Patterson asked. "You've gone pale." "Nothing. It's nothing." Amara folded the note and slipped it into her pocket. "Just junk mail." She walked to her room on trembling legs and locked the door behind her. Then she sat on the bed and stared at the photograph until her vision blurred with tears. The shelter had been the worst 2 years of her life. She had done things to survive that she never talked about, never thought about if she could help it. Things that would destroy everything she had built here if they came to light. She had been so careful, so certain that her past was buried. But someone had found it. Someone was digging. That afternoon, Harrison noticed something was wrong. "You've been quiet all day," he said, finding her in the kitchen while Emma napped. "Is everything okay?" "Fine. Just tired." "You're lying. You get this little crease between your eyebrows when you lie." "I didn't know you paid that much attention to my eyebrows." "I pay attention to everything about you." Harrison moved closer. "Talk to me. Whatever it is, we can figure it out." Amara wanted to tell him. The words were right there, pushing against her throat. But she couldn't. Not yet. Not until she knew who was threatening her and what they wanted. "I'm just adjusting," she said instead. "All of this is new. Sometimes it feels too good to be true." Harrison studied her for a long moment, clearly unconvinced. But he didn't push. "Whenever you're ready to talk, I'm here." The second envelope arrived 3 days later. This time, it contained court documents from 8 years ago. A case number. A defendant's name, Amara Johnson. The charge, theft. The note read, "TikTok." Amara barely made it to the bathroom before she vomited. The theft charge had been a mistake. A misunderstanding. She had been working at a convenience store, and her manager had accused her of stealing from the register. She hadn't taken anything. The real thief was another employee who had framed her. But Amara couldn't afford a lawyer. She had pleaded no contest just to make it go away, and the charge had haunted her ever since. It was why she couldn't get better jobs. Why background checks always came back flagged. Why she had ended up homeless in the first place. And now, someone was going to use it to destroy her. She thought about running, packing her bag in the middle of the night and disappearing before anyone could ask questions. She had done it before. She could do it again. But then she thought about Emma. About the way the little girl's face lit up every time Amara walked into the room. About the trust that had taken so long to build and would shatter in an instant if Amara vanished. She thought about Harrison. About the way he looked at her now. Not like an employee, not like a charity case. Like someone who mattered. She couldn't run. Not this time. The third envelope was delivered by hand. Amara was walking Emma in the garden when a woman appeared on the path ahead of her. She was in her 40s, well-dressed with sharp features and calculating eyes. "Miss Johnson, we finally meet." Amara pulled Emma's stroller closer. "Who are you?" "My name is Diana Walsh. I'm a journalist with the Hartford Courant. She smiled, but there was no warmth in it. I've been researching the Cole family for months. The custody battle, the scandal, the mysterious maid who captured everyone's attention. I'm not mysterious. I'm just a person doing her job. A person with a criminal record. A person who spent 2 years homeless. A person who may have done considerably more than anyone knows to survive those years. Diana tilted her head. Would you like to tell me about it? On the record. I have nothing to say to you. That's fine. I have enough sources to write the story without your cooperation. I just thought I'd give you a chance to share your side before it goes to print. Amara felt the blood drain from her face. What story? The real story of Amara Johnson. The theft conviction. The shelter years. The men who gave you money for certain services. The woman who came from nothing and somehow ended up in a billionaire's bed. I'm not in his bed. We're not in a relationship. But you'd like to be. Anyone with eyes can see that. And once this story breaks, everyone will know exactly what kind of woman has been raising Emma Cole. Amara wanted to scream, wanted to grab this woman by her expensive silk blouse and shake her until she understood what it was like to have no choices. To do things you hated just to eat, just to survive one more night. Instead, she kept her voice steady. I never sold myself. I worked at shelters. I cleaned buildings. I took any job I could find, no matter how degrading. But I never did what you're implying. That's not what my sources say. Your sources are wrong. Diana shrugged. Maybe, but accusations don't need to be true to be damaging. By the time your name is cleared, Harrison Cole will have fired you and moved on. That's how these things work. Why are you doing this? What did I ever do to you? Nothing personal. But Vivian Cole is paying me very well to find anything that can reopen the custody case. And you, Miss Johnson, are exactly what she's been looking for. Amara felt the ground shift beneath her feet. Vivian. Of course it was Vivian. The woman had lost in court, but she hadn't given up. She had simply changed tactics. Tell her it won't work, Amara said. Tell her Harrison knows about my past. He knows everything. It was a lie, but Diana didn't know that. The journalist's smile faltered. He knows about the theft charge. He knows everything. He ran a background check before he promoted me. None of this is a surprise. I don't believe you. Then publish your story. See what happens. But when Harrison Cole's lawyers come after you for defamation, don't say I didn't warn you. Diana studied her for a long moment, trying to read the truth behind Amara's steady gaze. Then she pulled out a business card. I'll be in touch when you're ready to tell the real story. She walked away, leaving Amara alone in the garden with a sleeping baby, and a decision that couldn't wait any longer. She found Harrison in his office that evening going over quarterly reports. He looked up when she knocked, and his face immediately shifted from concentration to concern. You look like you've seen a ghost. I need to tell you something, and when I'm done, you might want me to leave. Harrison set down his papers. That's not going to happen. You don't know what I'm about to say. I don't care what you're about to say. Nothing could make me want you to leave. A criminal record might. The words hung in the air between them. Harrison didn't flinch. He didn't look away. He just waited. Amara told him everything. The convenience store job, the false accusation, the plea deal because she couldn't afford to fight. The way that single charge had followed her for years, closing doors before she could even knock. She told him about the shelter, the desperation, the moments when she thought about giving up entirely. She didn't tell him about the men Diana had mentioned because there was nothing to tell. But she could see from his expression that he was bracing for something worse. When she finished, Harrison was quiet for a long moment. Is that everything? Yes. You're sure? I swear on my mother's memory. That's everything. Harrison stood up and walked around the desk. He stopped directly in front of her. I already knew about the theft charge. Amara's heart stopped. What? I ran a background check before I hired you. It came up. I didn't care then, and I don't care now. But you never said anything. Because it wasn't relevant. You needed a job. I needed help. Your past mistakes weren't going to change either of those things. Amara felt tears spilling down her cheeks. Vivian hired a journalist. She's going to publish a story. Make it sound like I'm some kind of criminal who seduced her way into your house. Let her try. Harrison, this could destroy everything. Your reputation, the company, Emma's future. My reputation was destroyed the moment Claire died, and I stopped caring about anything. The company survived. Emma's future is exactly what we're fighting for. He took her hands. I'm not afraid of Vivian. I'm not afraid of journalists. The only thing I'm afraid of is losing you. You barely know me. I know that you slept on cold floors so my daughter could rest. I know that you told me the truth when everyone else was lying. I know that you could have run a dozen times, but you stayed. His grip tightened. I know that I love you. Amara's breath caught. You what? I love you. I didn't plan it. I didn't expect it. But somewhere between the screaming matches and the midnight feedings and the absolute chaos of the last 2 months, I fell in love with you. Harrison, we can't. Why not? Because I'm the help. Because Vivian will use it against you. Because the world will never see us as equals. The world can go to hell. I spent 18 months letting other people's opinions dictate my life. I let them tell me how to grieve, how to parent, how to exist. I'm done. The only opinions that matter now are yours and Emma's. What about Claire? The question was soft, almost afraid. Amara had never mentioned Claire directly. It felt like trespassing on sacred ground. Harrison's expression shifted, became something gentler. Claire would have loved you. She had this thing about people who survived hard things. She used to say that suffering either makes you cruel or makes you kind, and the kind ones are the bravest people in the world. You don't know that she would have approved. I know that she spent her whole life caring about people who had nothing. I know that she chose me when I was broke and broken and had nothing to offer but promises. I know that she would have recognized in you exactly what I recognize. What's that? A good heart, a strong spirit, a person worth loving. Amara wanted to believe him. She wanted to let herself fall into the future he was offering. But the fear was still there, coiled in her chest like a snake. What if it all falls apart? What if Vivian wins? What if the story destroys everything and Emma ends up caught in the middle? Then we rebuild. Together. The same way we've been doing all along. He pulled her closer, and she let him. For the first time in years, she let someone hold her without expecting them to leave. I'm scared, she whispered. So am I. I don't know how to do this, how to be loved, how to stay. Neither do I. But I'm willing to learn if you are. Amara looked up at him. At this man who had yelled at her, apologized to her, fought for her, and now loved her. The journey from that first night in the nursery to this moment seemed impossible. And yet, here they were. Okay, she said. Okay. I'm willing to learn. Harrison's smile was the most beautiful thing she had ever seen. The next morning, they stood together in the living room and told Mrs. Patterson the truth. The older woman's response was a single sentence. It's about damn time. 2 days later, Diana Walsh's story appeared in the Hartford Courant. It was exactly as vicious as Amara had feared. Criminal past. Homeless drifter. Gold digger. The comments section was brutal. But Harrison had prepared for this. His response wasn't a denial. It wasn't a legal threat. It was an interview with the New York Times where he told the entire truth about his breakdown, his grief, his failure as a father, and the woman who had saved both him and his daughter. He talked about Claire, about losing her, about blaming Emma, about the 18 months of darkness that had nearly consumed him. And then he talked about Amara, about her strength, her resilience, her capacity for love in the face of everything that had tried to crush it out of her. She's not the villain in this story, Harrison said in the interview. She's the hero, and anyone who can't see that is too blinded by their own prejudices to matter. The public response was divided. Some people believed Diana's version, others believed Harrison's. The debate raged across social media for weeks. But in the end, it didn't matter. Because the people who actually knew them, who saw them together every day, who watched Emma thrive under their combined love, knew the truth. The court-appointed social worker filed her final report 4 months after the original hearing. Her conclusion was unequivocal. Emma Cole was safe-loved and flourishing. No further intervention was recommended. Vivian received a copy of the report at her Greenwich estate. She read it once, then threw it in the fireplace. She had lost. Completely and utterly lost. But she wasn't finished yet. At midnight, 3 weeks after the social worker's report, Amara woke to the sound of Emma crying. It was different from the usual cries, more urgent, more afraid. She ran to the nursery and found the crib empty. The window was open. Emma was gone. Amara's scream echoed through the entire mansion. Harrison reached the nursery in seconds, his heart pounding so hard he could hear it in his ears. Amara stood frozen by the empty crib, her face white as death, her hands gripping the rails like they were the only thing keeping her upright. "She's gone," Amara whispered. "Harrison, she's gone." He grabbed his phone and dialed 911 while simultaneously checking the window. It had been forced open from outside. There were marks on the frame, professional marks. "This is Harrison Cole. My daughter has been kidnapped from our home. 247 Fairfield Road. Send everyone. Now." Mrs. Patterson appeared in the doorway. Her robe hastily tied her face gray with shock. "I heard screaming. What happened?" "Someone took Emma." Harrison's voice cracked. "Someone came into our home and took my daughter." The next hour was chaos. Police cars filled the driveway. Detectives swarmed the property. Crime scene technicians dusted for fingerprints, while officers canvassed the neighborhood. Detective Maria Santos took Harrison's statement in the living room, while Amara sat beside him trembling uncontrollably. "Mr. Cole, I need to ask you some difficult questions. Do you have any enemies? Anyone who might want to harm you or your daughter?" "Vivian Cole, my mother-in-law." The words came out flat, certain. "She's been trying to take Emma from me for months. She lost in court. She hired a journalist to destroy my reputation. And now this." "Do you have any proof she's involved?" "She's the only one with motive." "Motive isn't proof. We need evidence." Amara spoke up, her voice hoarse. The window was forced from outside. Someone knew exactly where the nursery was. Someone who had been watching the house. "Mrs. Cole had surveillance on us," Harrison added. "She admitted it during the custody hearing. She knows our routines, our schedules, everything." Detective Santos made notes. "We'll look into it. In the meantime, I need you to stay calm and stay available. The first 48 hours are critical in cases like this." "Cases like this." Harrison stood up abruptly. "My daughter is 18 months old. She doesn't know what's happening. She's probably terrified. She's probably crying for—" His voice broke. He couldn't finish. Amara reached for his hand. "We'll find her." "You don't know that." "Yes, I do. Because I won't stop looking until we do." At 3 in the morning, Harrison's phone rang. Unknown number. He answered immediately. "Hello?" "Harrison." Vivian's voice was ice. "I assume you've noticed Emma is missing." "Where is she?" "What have you done?" "I've done what the courts refused to do. I've protected my granddaughter from an unfit father and his trashy girlfriend. If you hurt her, I would never hurt her. She's Claire's child, the only part of my daughter that still exists in this world." Vivian's voice softened slightly. "She's safe, Harrison. She's being cared for by proper people in a proper home. Something you couldn't provide." "Tell me where she is." "No, but I'll tell you what happens next. Tomorrow morning, my attorney will file an emergency petition claiming you've become mentally unstable. The kidnapping will be portrayed as a desperate act by a concerned grandmother. By the time anyone figures out the truth, I'll have permanent custody. That will never work. The police know you took her. The police know nothing. The people who removed Emma from your home are professionals, untraceable. And I have witnesses who will testify that I was at a charity event in Greenwich all evening. Vivian paused. Give up, Harrison. You've lost. Accept it gracefully. I will never stop fighting for my daughter. Then you'll destroy yourself in the process. And Amara, too. Is that what you want? Harrison gripped the phone so hard he thought it might shatter. I want my daughter back. Then walk away. Withdraw your opposition to my custody petition. End your relationship with that woman. Do both things, and I'll allow you supervised visits. Refuse, and you'll never see Emma again. The line went dead. Harrison stood motionless, the phone still pressed to his ear, his mind racing through impossible options. Detective Santos was watching him. Was that her? Yes, she admitted everything. She has Emma. Did you record the call? Harrison's blood went cold. He hadn't thought to record it. In his panic, he had just answered, No. Then we still don't have proof. She confessed. I'm telling you what she said. And she'll deny it. Without a recording, it's your word against hers. Amara stepped forward. What about phone records? Can't you trace where the call came from? We can try, but if she used a burner phone or routed it through multiple networks, it could take days. Weeks. Emma doesn't have weeks, Harrison said. She doesn't even have days. She needs to be home. She needs to be with people she knows. We're doing everything we can, Mr. Cole. It's not enough. Harrison walked out of the room, unable to stay still, unable to think. He ended up in the nursery, staring at the empty crib at the blankets still rumpled from where Emma had been sleeping just hours ago. Amara found him there 20 minutes later. I should have heard something, she said, her voice thick with guilt. I was right down the hall. How did I not hear? They were professionals. Vivian said so herself. They knew how to get in and out without making noise. I should have been in here. I should have been sleeping on the floor like I used to. This isn't your fault, isn't it? Amara's tears finally broke through. If I had never come here, none of this would have happened. Vivian wouldn't have had ammunition. The journalist wouldn't have had a story. Emma would still be safe. Harrison turned and grabbed her shoulders. Listen to me. Emma is alive because of you. She was failing before you came. She was fading. You brought her back. You brought me back. Whatever happens next, that doesn't change. What if we can't find her? What if Vivian wins? She won't win. How do you know? Because I won't let her. Because I will burn down everything I have before I let that woman raise my daughter. The next morning, Vivian's attorney filed the emergency petition exactly as she had promised. The documents claimed Harrison had suffered a psychotic break, that he had attacked a staff member, that Emma had been removed for her own safety by concerned family members. David Chen called within the hour. This is bad, Harrison. She's constructed an entire narrative, witnesses, medical opinions, documentation. It's all lies. I know that. But lies with paperwork are dangerous. The hearing is set for tomorrow at 9 a.m. Judge Holbrook is presiding again. That's good, right? She ruled in our favor last time. Last time Emma was safe and healthy in your care. This time Emma is missing, and Vivian is claiming she rescued her. The optics are completely different. What do? We find Emma before the hearing. That's the only way to prove Vivian is lying. Harrison spent the next 16 hours calling everyone he knew. Private investigators, former colleagues, anyone who might have connections, resources, information. He offered money. He made promises. He begged. Nothing worked. At 2 a.m, 8 hours before the hearing, Amara came to him with her laptop. I found something. Harrison looked at the screen. It was a social media post from one of Vivian's housekeepers. a photograph of the Greenwich estate with a timestamp from the previous day. "Look at the window," Amara said. "Second floor left side." Harrison squinted. In the window, barely visible, was a shape. Small. Moving. "That's Emma's room. When Vivian used to visit, that's where she always put Emma." Amara zoomed in as much as the image would allow. The shape in the window. It could be her. It could be anyone. But it could be her. And it's the only lead we have. Harrison stared at the photograph. "Even if Emma is there, I can't just walk in and take her. Vivian has security. Lawyers. The police would arrest me before I got through the gate." "Then don't go through the gate." "What are you suggesting?" Amara looked at him with fierce determination. "I'm suggesting that I go. Alone. Tonight." "Absolutely not. Think about it. Vivian's security knows your face. They know Mrs. Patterson. They don't know me. I spent 2 years learning how to get into places I didn't belong, how to move without being seen, how to survive. This isn't survival. This is breaking and entering. This is saving Emma. And if you get caught, then I get caught. At least Emma will know someone came for her. At least she'll know she wasn't forgotten." Harrison wanted to argue, wanted to protect her, wanted to find another way. But there was no other way. Not in the next 7 hours. "I'm coming with you." "No. If both of us get caught, there's no one left to fight for Emma in court. You have to be at that hearing tomorrow." "I don't." "Amara, this is what I can do. This is how I can help. Let me do it." He looked at her, at this woman who had come into his life with nothing and had given him everything, at the courage in her eyes, at the love that made her willing to risk her own freedom for a child who wasn't her own. "I love you," he said. "I know. That's why I have to do this." At 4 in the morning, Amara arrived at the Greenwich estate on foot. She had studied satellite images of the property, memorized the layout, identified the weakest points in the perimeter. The security was good, but not perfect. There was a spot near the service entrance where the cameras had a blind angle. She slipped through and made her way across the grounds, staying low, moving slowly. The house was massive, intimidating, designed to make people feel small. But Amara had spent years feeling small. She knew how to use it. She found a side door that led to the service areas. It was locked, but the lock was old. She had picked worse locks in worse places, with worse consequences. Inside, the house was silent. She moved through the servants' hallways, following the mental map she had created, working her way toward the second floor. The stairs creaked. She froze, waited, listened. Nothing. She kept climbing. The room Amara had identified from the photograph was at the end of a long corridor. The door was closed. She pressed her ear against it and heard something that made her heart soar. Emma, crying softly. The same sound that had drawn Amara to the nursery on her first night at the Cole estate. She tried the handle. Locked. She knocked gently. "Emma, baby, it's Amara. Can you hear me?" The crying stopped. Then a small voice, confused and scared. "Ma!" Tears streamed down Amara's face. "Yes, baby. It's me. I'm going to get you out of here. Just hold on." She worked on the lock with trembling hands. It was harder than the exterior door. More modern, better secured. "Come on," she whispered. "Come on." The lock clicked open. Amara pushed the door and found Emma standing in a crib, her face red and tear-streaked, her arms reaching up the moment she saw Amara. "Mama!" Amara scooped her up and held her close, sobbing into her tiny shoulder. "I've got you. I've got you, baby. You're safe now." "Well, isn't this touching?" Amara spun around. Vivian stood in the doorway, her silk robe immaculate, her face twisted with contempt. "Did you really think I wouldn't have alarms on this room? Did you really think you could walk into my home and take what's mine? She's not yours. She was never yours. She's Claire's daughter. That makes her mine. She's Harrison's daughter. That makes her ours. Vivian laughed bitterly. Hours. You've known this child for what, 3 months? You think that gives you any claim to her? I think love gives me a claim. I think showing up every single day gives me a claim. I think being here right now while you had her locked in a room crying alone gives me a claim. Security is on their way. The police will be here in minutes. You're going to prison, Miss Johnson, and Emma is going to stay right here where she belongs. Amara looked at Emma, at the fear in her eyes, at the way she clung to Amara's neck like she would never let go. She doesn't want to be here. Can't you see that? She's a baby. She doesn't know what she wants. She knows exactly what she wants. She wants to feel safe. She wants to feel loved, and you can't give her that. You never could. Vivian's face went red with rage. How dare you? I loved Claire. I love Emma. I've given everything for this family. You've given money. You've given things, but you've never given yourself. Never gotten down on the floor. Never held her through the hard nights. Never done any of the work that actually matters. Work. You think parenting is work. It's privilege. It's duty. It's legacy. It's love. And you don't know what that means. Footsteps thundered in the hallway. Security guards appeared behind Vivian. Take her, Vivian commanded, and get my granddaughter back in her crib. The guards moved toward Amara. She backed away, shielding Emma with her body. Don't touch her. Don't you dare touch her. Ma, Emma screamed, burying her face in Amara's shoulder. It's okay, baby. It's okay. I'm not going to let anyone hurt you. But there was nowhere to go. The guards were closing in. Vivian was watching with cold satisfaction, and Amara was trapped. Then, a voice cut through the chaos. That's enough. Everyone turned. Standing behind the security guards was a woman Amara didn't recognize. Middle-aged, official-looking, holding a badge. Detective Maria Santos, Greenwich Police. We received an anonymous tip about a kidnapped child being held at this address. Vivian went pale. This is my home. You can't just... I have a warrant, Mrs. Cole, and I have reason to believe that Emma Cole is being held here against her father's wishes. Detective Santos looked at Amara. Is that the child? Yes, this is Emma. And you are Amara Johnson. I work for Harrison Cole. I came to bring Emma home. Detective Santos nodded. The child stays with Miss Johnson until we sort this out. Everyone else step back. Vivian exploded. You can't do this. I have custody rights. I have attorneys. You have a court hearing in 4 hours, Mrs. Cole. I suggest you use the time to prepare your defense, because from where I'm standing, it looks like you kidnapped your own granddaughter. The hearing at 9 a.m. was standing room only. News of Emma's recovery had spread, and reporters packed the courthouse steps. Inside, Judge Holbrook looked grimmer than Amara had ever seen her. This court is now in session. We're here to address Mrs. Vivian Cole's emergency custody petition, as well as allegations of kidnapping brought by Mr. Harrison Cole. Richard Ashworth rose. Your Honor, my client acted out of genuine concern for her granddaughter's safety. The removal was temporary, intended only to... To what? Judge Holbrook interrupted. To circumvent the legal system, to take a child from her father's home in the middle of the night without authorization. Mrs. Cole believed Emma was in danger. Mrs. Cole had every legal avenue available to address those concerns. Instead, she chose to take matters into her own hands. That's not protection. That's kidnapping. Vivian stood up. Your Honor, with all due respect, that child is not safe with her father. He's involved with a woman who has a criminal record, who was homeless, who has no qualifications to care for a baby. My granddaughter deserves better. Judge Holbrook turned to Harrison. Mr. Cole, would you like to respond? Harrison rose slowly. He looked at Vivian, at the judge, at Amara, holding Emma in the front row. Your Honor, everything Vivian said about Amara's past is true. She has a theft conviction from a case where she was wrongly accused. She spent 2 years homeless after her mother died. She has no formal childcare training. The courtroom buzzed. David Chen looked panicked. But here's what Vivian left out. Harrison continued. Amara slept on a cold floor so my daughter could rest. She sang lullabies in the dark when no one else would come. She told me the truth about my failures as a father when everyone else was afraid to. She risked her freedom last night to save Emma from a woman who claimed to love her, but kept her locked in a room alone. He turned to face Vivian directly. You want to talk about qualifications? Amara's qualifications are written in my daughter's smile. In the fact that Emma sleeps through the night now. In the word she said the moment Amara found her in your house. What word? Judge Holbrook asked. Ma. She called Amara Ma. Not because she's confused, because she knows who her real mother is. The one who shows up, the one who stays. The courtroom fell silent. Judge Holbrook studied the documents in front of her for a long moment. Then she looked up. This court finds no merit in Mrs. Vivian Cole's custody petition. Furthermore, based on the evidence presented and the testimony of Detective Santos, I'm recommending that Mrs. Cole be charged with kidnapping and custodial interference. Vivian's face crumpled. No, you can't do this. She's all I have left of Claire. Then perhaps you should have thought about that before you treated her like property instead of a person. Judge Holbrook banged her gavel. Custody remains with Harrison Cole. This matter is closed. The courtroom erupted. Reporters shouted questions. Cameras flashed. Vivian collapsed into her attorney's arms, sobbing. But Harrison saw none of it. He was already moving toward Amara and Emma, pushing through the crowd, reaching for the two people who had become his entire world. When he finally held them both, Emma reached up and touched his face. Dada, she said clearly. It was the first time she had ever called him that. Harrison laughed through his tears. Yeah, baby, Dada's here, and I'm never letting go. 6 months later, the Cole estate had transformed into something unrecognizable. The formal gardens were filled with plastic toys. The pristine living room bore the marks of countless play sessions. The kitchen always smelled like whatever disaster Harrison was attempting to cook. And in the nursery, now painted in soft yellows and greens, Emma slept peacefully through every night. Vivian had accepted a plea deal to avoid prison time, community service and mandatory counseling in exchange for relinquishing all custody claims. She moved to Florida and never contacted them again. The journalist Diana Walsh was fired after her sources were discredited. She tried to pitch the story to other outlets, but no one wanted a narrative that had been so publicly dismantled. Mrs. Patterson stayed on as head housekeeper, though her duties had expanded to include what she called grandmother training. She taught Amara recipes from Claire's childhood and shared stories about the woman Emma would never meet, but would always know through the people who loved her. On a warm spring evening, Harrison found Amara in the garden, watching Emma toddle across the grass, chasing butterflies she would never catch. I have something for you, he said. He held out a small velvet box. Amara's breath caught. Harrison. I know it's fast. I know we've only known each other for 9 months. But I've been dead for longer than that. And you brought me back to life. He opened the box to reveal a simple diamond ring. Amara Johnson, will you marry me? Yes. The word came out before she could think, before she could doubt, before she could list all the reasons why this shouldn't work. Because it did work. Against all odds, against all expectations, against everything the world said about people like them, it worked. Harrison slipped the ring on her finger and pulled her close. Emma waddled over and grabbed both their legs. Mama Dada up. They lifted her together, holding her between them, a family forged not by blood, but by choice. I love you, Harrison said. I love you too, Amara replied. And Emma, as if understanding the moment, leaned forward and kissed them both on the cheek. 1 year later, the Cole Foundation for Single Mothers opened its doors. The building was located in the Bronx, 2 blocks from the shelter where Amara had spent her darkest years. At the opening ceremony, Amara stood before a crowd of donors, reporters, and women who reminded her of who she used to be. I know what it feels like to have nothing, she said. To be invisible. To be told that you don't matter because you're poor, because you're homeless, because you're the wrong color in the wrong place at the wrong time. She looked at Harrison holding Emma in the front row. But I also know what it feels like to be seen, to be valued, to be loved exactly as you are. And that's what we want to offer here. Not charity, not pity, just the chance to be seen. The foundation served over 300 women in its first year. Many of them went on to find jobs, homes, and stability they had never imagined possible. And every night, no matter how busy the day had been, Amara returned to the Cole estate and tucked Emma into bed. She no longer slept on the floor. She slept in the master bedroom beside the man who had once screamed at her for daring to touch his daughter. And every morning, she woke up knowing that she was exactly where she belonged. Because family isn't about blood or money or status. Family is about showing up, staying present, choosing each other again and again through every storm and every silence. Amara Johnson had spent her whole life running from a past that tried to define her. But in the Cole estate with Harrison and Emma, she finally found the one thing she had always been searching for: home. And she was never going to let it go.